Hi there and welcome to the Fix and Build Show. What I was originally planning was showing a complete drywall episode in 1/2 hour today, but unfortunately due to the time constraints of the footage I shot, I broke it up into two 1/2 hour episodes. So you're going to see today the installation process. The next episode you'll see more of the tape and fold, finishing process. To see that second episode you're going to want to check the website, www.fixandbuildshow.com. I'll be scrolling across the address during the show. That'll give you information on when that show is going to air. So enjoy the show today, and I will see you for the next episode. Thanks. Hi there, and welcome to the Fix and Build Show. My name is Vince Frattanardo, and on today's episode we'll be demonstrating and talking about the basics of drywall installation and repair. Drywall, if you're not familiar with the product, is basically what makes a wall a wall. It is a wallboard material that is put up once the wall has been constructed, the plumbing and electrical lines have been run, the insulation has been placed in the exterior wall. The wallboard will serve to seal up the wall. It will also serve as fire protection, insulation, sound barrier, and then will be painted and decorated to the homeowner's choice. Now, before I show you how to install it, I want to tell you a little history about the product. The product was first invented in 1917 by the United States Gypsum Company, but really kind of just laid around on the shelf because the method of wall construction at the time was the lath and plaster system. The lath and plaster system involved taking horizontal strips like the one I'm holding here, putting it between the studs at a very fine course, and then adding plaster to it. This was a beautiful result. I personally grew up in a lath and plaster walled home, but it was very expensive, took a long time to construct, very labor intensive, and required exact temperature conditions. Well, about the 1940s roll around and World War II starts up, and the American Armed Forces look for a way to build barracks and military installations overseas quick and efficiently. Well, they turned to drywall, and it worked out excellent for them. Didn't require as much labor, weather conditions didn't have to be perfect, and it worked out great. Even so great that once the war ended and the era of production built homes came after the war with such a demand, that the product kind of stuck around and now is one of the most common construction products you'll see on site. Now, drywall has a few field names, different names you may have heard of. Sheetrock is a common one, but that's actually a brand name. It's the name of the product that's actually made by the United States Gypsum Company that invented the product itself. Gypsum board is also common, wall board. These are more technical names because the product is actually a gypsum product. Gypsum is a mineral. Calcium sulfate is what's in the boards you'll see today. It's basically chalk encased in paper on both sides. When you're back in school, before you got to go out and have some fun, you had to listen to someone talk first. Well, I'll try to be brief, but I do want to go over some basic drywall information. Now, the boards we'll be using will be 4 foot in width by 8 to 12 foot in length. Typically, the standard board is the 4 by 8 foot sheet. Thicknesses vary. You'll want to use 1/2 inch thick for wall boards and 5/8 inch thick boards on the ceiling. Now, these boards, as I mentioned before, basically this chalk material encased in paper. The front of your board will have more of the white paper. The back of the board will have this, what looks more like cardboard. You're going to want to make sure when you're putting these boards up that this white side is facing you on both the ceilings and the walls. Other types of boards you'll see out there, a green board which is used in bathrooms. That's where you've got a situation where water can come up right against the wall. The green paper will apply a little more water resistance. And type X boards. Those go in garages. They're a little thicker, 5/8 inch thick boards, and they add a little more fire protection. Now, the ceiling boards get installed first. Ceiling board goes right up against the ceiling structural members and the wall itself, and then the wall board comes up and butts underneath the ceiling board. Now, boards can either be applied vertically or horizontally. Horizontally is good where you've got those 12-foot long boards. Makes the job a little quicker for you. Horizontal applications, you'll want to make sure and go ahead and stagger your boards here so you don't have all your connections all in one stud. For the corners, you're going to want to go ahead and butt the corners, but make sure that one board overlaps each other. This will give you a good corner connection and room to put your corner bead, which I'll be showing later on, which is the hard plastic or metal that strengthens your corners. Now, the fasteners you'll be using will be listed in the stores as a 1 1/4 inch drywall screw. Technically, it's a type W bugle head screw because it has this bugle shape to it. And these screws will be attached or screwed in every 12 inches on the ceiling and every 16 inches on the walls. Now this goes ahead with your stud spacing or your joist spacing on the ceiling, which is 16 to 24 inches. But then you go ahead and put a screw along those studs or joists at either 12 inches for the ceiling and 16 inches for the walls. I'll be showing this and demonstrating it later on. It's a little confusing right now. Now, you've also seen nails out there. The thing about nails is that they also have a chance of popping out, but a pound of nails costs about as much as a pound of screws. And for nails, your distances are even shorter. It's about half of these in each of these applications. So it's basically costing you twice the amount of money, and it's going to be more work because you've got to hammer those things in. Back to the screws. The screw gun you'll be using looks something like this. They can either be purchased or rented. Renting is probably a little better deal for you if you're just doing a small project. And this head here is good for two reasons. One, it sets your screw so that it doesn't break that paper, because once you break the paper on these boards, you lose your structurability. But the screw also sets itself in that when you're taping and floating and put your joint compound on, the screw doesn't get in the way. Well, unfortunately, I've got some bad news for you. Due to the time constraints of our show, I'm not going to be able to show ceiling drywall installation, but I'm going to talk about it for you right now. A couple things to remember: it's the 5/8 inch sheet, not the ½ inch for the walls, and you're going to be doing every 12 inches on center, not 16, as I'll be showing later on with the walls. Putting it on these joists up here, pretty easy to run. The problem is just holding that board over your head. Yeah, it's kind of tiring, but if you got your room to do, you'll get used to it. Okay, so now that you've learned just about anything in drywall that you've ever wanted to know, we're going to go ahead and start laying out the show. What I've got here is a wall here with a window, electrical box, a corner. So we'll go ahead and put some sheets up here. We're going to cut for that electrical box and go around these corners, which will also include the tape and float process, which will be the normal tape and float of just a vertical run, and also these corners here, putting up some corner bead. So let's go ahead and get to it. I'm going to grab a sheet here. This is a 4x8 sheet, ½ inch. Weighs about 50 pounds or so, so you want to keep that in mind. I'm just going to go ahead and lay it on this wall vertically. Now you can run these either horizontal or vertically because we've got an 8-foot wall. I've got my drywall lift here, which has a lip, which I can stick under the board and pick it up with my feet to get the board in position. Once the board is in position, I've got my studs at the edge here because I followed my 24-inch on center spacing. I can go ahead and start screwing up this board. Now we do have a window behind here. That will get cut out once the board is installed, because if I was to cut out this opening and then try to put the board back up, I could have the possibility of the damage of cutting that board and splitting it. Because this is not the strongest material, despite that it weighs quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and screw this in. Just go ahead and tack this up here. What my drywall gun does is actually kind of puts a little divot, sinks the screw, and what that's good for is that when I put my joint compound along this wall, it will hide that screw and the screw will not get in the way. So I've got my board tacked up here, and I'm now going to start putting in my screw. Again, you want to keep about a ½ inch away from the edge of the board here, and then follow our screw schedule that I gave earlier, the 16-inch on center spacing, or every